beautiful love and hearts that they can. But should anybody be a sound engineer, it's like a doctor on a plane. Is there a doctor on the plane? So I love being here because I love hearing, if we get the timing right, hearing those puja bells of welcoming God. Pujya Swamiji always says, all of the Hindu temples, before you go in the temple, there's a bell outside. And he always says the bell, sometimes people think, well, the bell is to sort of alert God, I'm coming inside. And he says it's not a bell for God. God doesn't need to be awakened or informed or get ready, somebody's coming in. It's a bell for us to wake ourselves up as we enter the temple, to remind us we're going into a holy place. We're entering the holy place. And so when we ring the bell in our evening puja, we ring it for God, but it's really for us. It's a way that wakes us up into, now I'm going into puja. I'm coming home. It's not ding dong, God, I'm home, but it's ding dong. For ourselves. So we got lucky with the timing tonight. So I love when that timing overlaps with the family that lives there and does their puja. And welcome again to Satsang. I'm so glad to be back together with you all. As many of you know, I was out last night in Delhi, and being here is always a blessing, and it's one that I always try never to take for granted. But you live someplace and it starts to become the normal, and it's so easy. Whether it's a beloved you live with, whether it's a sacred place you live, whether it's your health, any aspect of something that's so precious, but that's there all the time, it's so easy to forget to appreciate it. And as much as I don't really enjoy going to Delhi, I enjoy it for the coming back aspect. I enjoy remembering how excited I am to be here, remembering what a beautiful gift and blessing it is to be here. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And as always, starting with a question that's come in advance, and then we'll open it up to anyone here who has any questions at all. Why do we resist change? We grow rigid in our minds and in our lives. Have you ever, raise your hand if you have a practice of yoga or even any kind of stretching exercises that you do. Raise your hand. Great. Oh, wow. We're at about 100% almost. I love that. Now, think about times in your life when maybe you were unwell, or maybe you were on some crazy travel trip, or maybe a loved one was unwell, or something was going on in which for a stretch of days you didn't do your yoga. You didn't do your stretching. Then the first day back, you bend over, and the legs simultaneously go, and, right? There's this beautiful feeling of, yes, I am again doing my practice. And they scream because the muscles have all tightened up. You're out of practice. You've lost the flexibility. And so there's a part of the body that says, don't. But you push through it because you've got a practice, and you know you'll loosen up again. It's going to feel really good again in just some time. But that initial experience of pain and resistance and contraction when you first bend over is very similar to the experience that our minds have when we try to make them change. They've grown rigid. They've gotten fixed in a certain way. And stretching them, trying to change them, trying to bend them, it hurts. There's resistance. They don't want to bend any more than your body wants to bend after being out of commission for many days or weeks. Or even first thing in the morning, right? There's always that first thing, and the body resists. So the mind resists change because it's grown rigid. We've gotten very comfortable in our way of thinking, our way of living. We're able to go on autopilot. Change requires flexibility. It requires surrender. I mean, think about, I love that you all do yoga, so think about bending over into what in many yogic lineages we call Uttanasana. You're bending over, your fingers are going to touch your toes, or your palms will go to the floor, depending on how flexible you are. Now, if you've never done that before, you've never bent over like that, and somebody says, touch your toes, and the hamstring grips, sorry, I have this cough drop in that's the juice just went down the wrong side. As the hamstring grips, the mind is going to get afraid. If you've never done it before, we're going to think, my God, am I going to break my legs? Is the muscle going to tear in half? There's a fear. There's a fear of bending. There's a fear of stretching. A muscle that's never been stretched can feel like a bone. And there's fear then, oh my God, what will happen if I stretch it too much? Am I going to injure myself? Is it going to rip? Is it going to tear? Is it going to break? Same thing happens in the mind. We ask it to think a new way, to change, to bend. And the mind panics. Oh my God. What if? What if? What if? What if? Because the mind is so used to doing things in only one way. The other thing that happens with change is we actually have to become conscious. We can no longer be on autopilot. Most of us live most of our lives on autopilot. In patterns. Patterns of thought, patterns of reaction, patterns of emotion, patterns of action and living. We're on autopilot most of the time. But as anyone who's tried to bring in a new pattern, a new habit, knows, you've got to be really conscious. You've got to be really aware as you cultivate it. And the ego doesn't really like full consciousness and awareness. It likes autopilot. Because everything is known, everything is familiar, everything is safe in the ego's sense. And so it's going to resist the same way that the muscles of the body resist bending. And the answer is the same. In the same way that you gently and lovingly coax your body into bending over because you know, no matter how stiff you may be, that's not a sign of health. The stiffer you are, the less healthy you are. In fact, there's a great saying that Pujya Sadhviji always says. It works much better in Hindi than in English. I'll give it to you in Hindi for those who can benefit from that, and then I will translate into English. He says, "Jukta to wo hai, jisme jaan hota hai. Akad to murde ka pachan hota hai." And it means the way to know that you are actually alive is because you can bend. That which is stiff and unbendable is a corpse, is a dead body. The ability to bend means you are alive. The stiffer you are, the more rigid you are, the more likely it is you're actually a corpse. So we coax our physical bodies into bending because we know it's good for us. We would never let the body say, "Oh, my hamstrings don't bend, forget it, I'll just go back to bed." We know gently, lovingly, little by little by little by little, this is good for me. This will bring more health. And in the same way, we bring change to our minds and our lives, little by little, lovingly. It's not about taking on the ego like in battle. It's not, "I'll show you, I'm going to annihilate you." Lovingly, gently. Because at the end of the day, remember that your ego exists inside yourself, inside your mind. Which means that at the end of the day, regardless of who wins and who loses, you're in bed together. So this idea of annihilating the ego literally means I'm going to bed with the enemy. Which, as anyone who's been married or in relationship knows, doesn't make for a very good night's sleep. So we don't want to annihilate it. It's not about doing battle with it. It's about gently, gently, lovingly transforming it. And so we do it the same way that we stretch the body, with an awareness that it's necessary, that it's healthy, that just because some other way feels set, rigid, known, familiar, doesn't mean I don't need to change. I do. And so slowly, slowly, we start expanding and expanding and expanding. And ultimately, that's what yoga is. It's a flexibility not just in the body, but in our minds, in our hearts, in our lives. So yeah, we resist the change because we're rigid and contracted and safe in the known. But we have to move beyond that. We're not here on earth to be safe and rigid and contracted and familiar. We're here to constantly unfold, open, grow, blossom, transform. I always think about a flower, and I think that first petal to break away from the flower bud. You know, you see a flower bud, and it's like this. And then one petal first breaks, opens. And then slowly they all start to open. But I think frequently about that first flower petal opening and what that experience must be like to be that first one. But then, of course, she is the one that leads to the blossoming of the flower. One of my favorite stories of nature is of a type of bird called quail, where they can fly, they're birds, but they tend to also mostly waddle on the ground. Little birds, and they mostly waddle but can fly, and they're always in big groups. And what's really interesting about quail is you see them a lot in different parts of America on the road, by the side of the road. And you'll be driving and there's a whole group of quail in the road. And the car's coming. They don't fly away, they just keep waddling and waddling and waddling on the road. The car gets closer, they still waddle and waddle. You honk the horn, they waddle and waddle. Finally, one of them lifts off in flight. And as it does, simultaneously, all of them lift up together. It's like there's some energetic, magical frequency, catalyst, some kind of ignition that flows through them, and they all lift up. And I think about this sometimes in terms of change, that it just takes one aspect of us. Even all of you isn't on board, don't worry. If any part of you is on board to change, that's all you need. Let that part actually start to change. And the rest will come together. And then, of course, the metaphor is also very beautiful for all of us collectively. So many of us worry about other people. How do I get other people to change? Well, you start changing. You open your petal. You lift up off the ground, knowing that the magnetic pull of you is actually going to have a huge power on others. Other questions? Any question? Yeah.
Sadhviji, the question I have is on the same line, on the change. To make a change, most of the time or sometimes we need direction. It took me almost like 60 years to be very close to the religious or the sannyasis or something like this. All my life I was avoiding them, just staying away from them, as if they're going to take advantage of me.
Yeah, I understand.
And very recently, I started changing, And this is the closest I have ever been,
I'm honored.
Yeah, thank you. And my question is, is there a checklist or something like that?
Can you hold the mic a little
Oh, yeah.
closer? Yeah, there it is.
Is there something like guidelines or a checklist we can have so that we know who is a real yogi or who is a fake one? Because I have always heard sannyasi ji and you always saying there are fake sannyasis, there are fake sannyasis. He never stops saying that, And so, to be conscious about doing it, we really need something, some kind of a guidance.
So, the first part, in order to change, we need direction, absolutely. And a lot of times that direction comes from outside. And a lot of times that initial direction comes from inside. The best way to catalyze change in the beginning is simply to ask yourself a question, which is this working? Very simple. Is it working? Is the way I'm doing it working? Am I happier and happier every day? Am I more and more at peace every day? Is my life more and more meaningful? Is it working? I mean, if my highest goal in life was to make a lot of money, you could be pretty sure that I would pay a lot of attention to my bank balance. Right? If that was my biggest goal, and I was getting up every day and going to work and working really hard with the only goal being to make money, well, I would sure as heck want to make sure I was making it. I would want to make sure that my bank account was actually growing. In the same way, we need to ask ourselves, what is it I'm looking for? I'm not here to tell you what your goal should be. What are you looking for? Most of us, when we're honest, want to be happy. We're looking for a deep sense of happiness, joy, bliss, not just a nice ice cream cone or pizza or a good movie, but a really deep sense of joy and bliss. Most of us are looking for a deep connection in our life to the divine, to something higher, bigger, more than just this constantly changing physical body. Most of us are looking for meaning in our life, that it should matter to someone in some way that I got out of bed in the morning. That at night when I go to sleep, I should be able to look back on the day and recognize that there was some kind of a ripple impact in the world due to the fact that I actually dragged myself out of bed in the morning. So these are the things that for most of us, we're looking for. Some are looking for enlightenment. But ask yourself, what are you looking for? And then ask yourself, is it working? Is what I am doing getting me there? And that, for me, is always the greatest catalyst to begin us on a path of realizing we need to change. Because if most of us are honest, we'll realize it's not working. I'm doing everything the culture said I should do, society said, the media said, my social media influencer said, I'm losing the weight, I'm making the money, I'm doing this, I'm going here, I'm going there, and I'm not actually happier. my life isn't actually more meaningful. I'm not actually any more connected to the divine. So that's in response to your first point. In response to your second point about, well, most of us need direction. That direction comes from yogis, gurus, and how do you know a real one? Is there a checklist? So there isn't a checklist for the real ones. Although, as I say that, I realize it's not exactly true. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna actually gives us a beautiful checklist for what a yogi is. There's many, 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 many lines in the Gita. How to know a yogi, how to know a true bhakt. What is a wise one? What is a devotee? Arjuna says, how do I know? And we're given indications. A yogi is one who is balanced in pleasure, in pain, in success, in failure. A yogi is one whose mind is still and who's anchored and grounded in the divine, in the true self, who's not lost in ignorance, who's not identified with the body. The devotee, the true bhakt, is one who's a friend to everyone, kind and caring and compassionate to everyone. No discrimination, helps all beings. So we are given on some level that type of list. I can give you a little bit of a list of how to know someone is not the right one, which therefore in reverse should hopefully help. Because while the yogis, the masters, may all have these characteristics, it may be difficult to necessarily know in just a short while whether a being in front of you has all these characteristics or not. I remember when I first came to Rishikesh 26 and a half years ago now, before I met Pujya Swamiji, before I moved into Parmarth, when we were still staying at a hotel and walking through the market, we had met a local sadhu who was very excited to have a couple of American disciples. There wasn't nearly the population of foreigners in Rishikesh at the time. There was, I think, a big surge in the 70s after the Beatles had come, and then of course it's been growing in recent years, but in the mid-90s there weren't that many. So he was very excited. He spoke English, started talking to us, sort of adopted us. And he told us to come every day to his room. We went. Then he told us that every day when we came, we needed to make sure to bring a box of sweets because that was standard operating procedure. So we thought, okay. And for us, it was really just kind of an adventure. Like, it was fun. We had met this orange-robed man, and he was teaching us something, and we developed a pattern. We'd go, and we'd buy a box of sweets, and then we'd go, and then one day he told us that, along with the sweets, the other thing standard is you also give money, like you give a box, and on top of the box you put some cash, and then you... And after a few days, I finally met Pujya Swamiji, my guru. I had been waiting for him to arrive. Many of you know the story. I won't go into it all now, but I had been waiting for him to arrive back so I could get permission to stay here at Parmarth Niketan. Finally, he had come. I had met him. He granted me permission. I was moving in. We bumped into this other sadhu on the street again later that evening, and I was ecstatic, and I said, "Guess what? Guess what?" Thinking, of course, he's going to be so happy because it's this beautiful blessing I've been given. Guess what? I met Pujya Sadhviji, the head of Parmarth Niketan, and he's going to let me stay. And this guy throws a fit in the middle of the market, screaming at us. Somebody literally had to kind of drag him away. "You're my disciples. You're my disciples. You're not allowed. You can't go. You're my disciples." So that sort of thing is a pretty good indication that he's probably not someone who's going to be able to teach you a lot that's of deep value. The word guru literally means the one who removes the darkness and brings light. The light that the guru brings is the light of truth, of who we are, showing us the divinity, the truth of who we are. It's not that the guru shines the light on themselves. And so another good way of knowing that perhaps it's not the right one to follow is someone for whom the light that they shine is only on themselves. When you're in the presence of the guru, you should feel the light of yourself. You should feel the light in you, of your path. It's not, "Look at me. Aren't I bright?" It's, how can being in the presence of the yogi, of the guru, help you experience the light of yourself? Another good way goes back to the example of the man we had met at the beginning, which is the real gurus, the real yogis, are doing this not for themselves, but they're doing it for us. Meaning, we want it, they're there for us. We don't want it, they're not going to hold our hand to the stove. Because they've got total faith in the universe that whenever the time is right, it'll happen. The universe is infinitely patient. They're infinitely patient. We will come around. This year, next year, this lifetime, next lifetime. And also because they don't have an agenda. They're not looking to collect disciples. Anybody who tells you they are the only ones for you, they are the best, they are the most enlightened, they are the only enlightened. Anybody who you feel like is grabbing you, chances are is someone grabbing you for themselves rather than for you. And so I would move in the other direction. So those are some ways of knowing. But lastly, the truth really is also, we've got an internal kind of meter of sincerity and truth. And it works for all of us. As long as you don't allow yourself to get swept up by drama and charisma. Because there have been throughout history, not just in the spiritual world, but in the political world, and so many different aspects of life, leaders of great charisma, great speaking powers, who have led people to destruction, their own and others. So just as long as you're sure that you're not getting swept up in a sort of mob mentality around charisma and drama and a show, because that's the thing that makes us not so in tune with our own internal monitor. But if you anchor in deeply and feel it, you'll know. This person is real and right for me? Or this person is doing some kind of a drama because they want something from me? You'll feel it. You've got that intelligence in you. It's just sometimes charisma and drama and show sweeps us off our feet, and we don't quite know what's happened until we are on the wrong direction. But use your internal, what Pujya Swamiji calls our internal GPS. Follow that, you'll feel it. And congratulations for finally being on the path after 60 years. Pujya Swamiji says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. So don't worry about the time you've lost. Now is morning. Now is the beginning. Welcome home. Beautiful. Yes.
Pranam. Continuing from Thursday about empty me. What one can do self to go towards that empty me or achieve that empty me. Because many things most of the things after that day I was thinking is because of the empty, that we need to really empty me.
Yeah.
So what one can do.
Beautiful. So a few days ago we were talking about the prayer, which is my personal prayer every day, of just, oh God, empty me, so that more and more of your grace can flow through me. Just let me be a clearer and clearer, emptier and emptier channel for your grace. What can we do to empty ourselves? It's a minute by minute, moment by moment tuning. Let's say that you decide, you go to the doctor says you've got high blood pressure, you've got high cholesterol, you're too fat, you've got to lose weight or you're going to die. So you go on a diet. No sugar, no gluten, no this, no that. Now, all day long, you're thinking about that. Every time you've got to have food, you're constantly thinking about what you can eat, what you can't eat. You're trying to remember to drink enough water. You're remembering to get enough steps in. You're remembering if the doctor gave you some kind of medicine or vitamins, you're remembering to take them. Taking care of your health has now become an orientation of your mind. Dozens of times every day, your mind remembers, I'm on a health program. In the same way, when you decide this is going to be my goal, to let go of that which is clogging me up, that's blocking me from being a channel of divine flow, ego, attachments, grudges, expectations, identities, you start to get really aware of it. And it's subtle and it takes a while because it's deep. for example, I notice my mind. Every time my mind starts to get into some kind of a reactive mentality, or every time my mind starts to get into a stressed sort of, oh my God, and if this happens, then that, then oh my God, this never-ending cycle that so many of us get into. I'm able to catch myself and realize, oh my God, I am clogging up my channel. All of this, the way that my brain is doing it, is clogging up my channel. Every time I say, oh no this, oh no that, what about this? I'm clogging up my channel. Every time I say, this is wrong, that's bad, I am this, I need it like this, it must be this. That person is stupid, I am smart. All of these sorts of judgments, pronouncements, clog up my channel. And you just start to become aware of them. And the minute it arises, for me, it's literally a visual practice of just letting it go. In the beginning, I used to beat myself up for it. There you go again. And then you realize, well, that just clogs up your channel even more. Every time you berate yourself or criticize yourself, it's like dumping sand in your channel. It just clogs it and fills it. And so instead, I just bow and offer it. Bow and offer it at God's feet, literally. Another judgment, another stress, another false identification, another way that I lost the preciousness of the moment. And you just literally find yourself sort of bowing all day, exhaling a lot. You do it in the exhales. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. It's an orientation of mind. And what's so beautiful you'll see as you start doing it is the more and more you empty yourself, the better and better it feels. And you realize how all this stuff is like baggage that you're carrying. And it weighs you down, that channel being stuffed full. It's like if you've eaten too much food. And you can't move so well, and you can't breathe so well. And it's that feeling of, does somebody have a wheelbarrow to get me away from the table? You're stuffed. And that freedom with which you move through the world is not available to you because you have quite literally stuffed yourself. Well, we do that mentally as well. Spiritually as well. We stuff ourselves so much that there's no flow, there's no freedom. So the more you can let go of, the better it feels. Beautiful. Yeah, one last question there in the back. Okay. Are you here tomorrow? All right. Okay. That's okay, sweetie. Don't worry. We'll take hers, and then before I answer it, we'll listen to hers and see if we can answer them together.
Okay. So I have a question. It can sound like I am 60 years old, but yeah, that's a question that I have
I can tell you're not.
So recently, I do have this in my mind that every morning when I get up, right, that question comes to my mind that why I'm really living this life, and that's that's a kind of depressing thought that comes to my mind, and then it makes me more lazy, and it doesn't allow me to really get out of my bed. And I feel very, very, very low when I get up in the morning. So I really don't know why it's happening to me these days. And, that constant thoughts, which I am myself not able to analyze that what's going on really in my mind, what do I really want, and how can I really get out of it?
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. I'll come to the answer in just a moment. I just want to hear her question too. Yes.
Namaste, Sadhviji.
Namaste.
So my question is that I've been practicing meditation and yoga for a long time. It has made me a better person. But I try to avoid any unwanted arguments, explanations, and however, since I'm an overthinker, I find myself into situations where I do not have to explain people. But it's so negative sometimes, I do not know how to deal with it. And I get affected by it a lot because I overthink about it. So how to control your thoughts in a way that it doesn't get into your head and affect you? And
Beautiful. Okay. So we'll start with that one, and then we'll come back and end on yours. The best way to deal with that kind of judgment, that kind of critical judgment where you're overthinking, you can see what's wrong with the other person, you can see where they're wrong, you can't help yourself but get into the argument, is to see other people as like different flowers in a flower garden, or different types of fruit in a fruit orchard. You may have a preference. You may really prefer oranges to bananas. But you're not going to go over there and get in an argument with a banana tree. You may love the juiciness of oranges. The vitamin C, it's wonderful, it's hydrating, it's sweet, it's juicy, it's lovely. But when you go to the banana tree, even if you don't want a banana, you're not going to try to convince him to be more juicy, to be more sweet, to have more vitamin C. Because you understand, well, okay, he is like that. He is a banana. Nothing you say or do is going to turn that guy into an orange tree. And so you walk by. You acknowledge him as a banana tree, and you walk by. You don't have to eat bananas. But you realize that it doesn't make any sense to lose your energy, that shakti of your time, your speech, your thoughts, in trying to turn a banana into an orange. He is a banana, not going to change. In the same way, people are stuck in their own ways of being. We know that. Think about the past. You said you're an overthinker. Great. Overthink. How many people have you actually changed their perspective? How many people in arguing do you actually change how they think? The very best you get is somebody says, "Chalo kar do, yaar nahi to fir ho jayegi uski." Kam se kam shant to ho jayegi, hai na? Kar do. Haan, kar do. But that's not what you want. You don't want just behavior modification for people who are patronizing you. You want them to change how they think. But you cannot badger them into that. All you get usually is conflict. And again, the very best you ever get is behavior modification just because they don't want to see you have a fit. But you're not actually changing them. And so when you realize that, using your intellect, you realize it doesn't make any sense. The only way to really change people is to be a magnet of the truth. You live what you know to be true. That will be a magnet. Whether they get drawn to it immediately or later on as part of their own karmic journey, which you have no control over. But stop using your energy, your time, your Shakti to turn banana trees into oranges. Learn to just see them all as what they are. Don't begrudge anyone. But you're allowed to have your point of view. You're allowed to have your preferences. But save your energy. And your thinking mind will help you realize that this is the only way. Because nothing else works. And with our beautiful sweetheart wondering why she gets out of bed every day. I think most of us have probably been through times in our lives where it's like that. It's really common, especially when we're young. But even as we age, there's moments, there's phases where we wonder, Kar kya unme? What am I doing? Why does it matter? And those are the times I have found to re-anchor yourself in asking a different question. How can I be of service? Oh God, how do you want to use me? So instead of asking yourself, what do I want today? Which can certainly paralyze you and keep you in bed all day. Instead, ask, oh God, use me today. Don't say, what do you want of me? God doesn't answer to you. God doesn't have to give you a game plan in advance. Maybe you'll get an answer. But simply ask in the morning, oh God, use me today. And get up from bed simply with the intention that you will be utilized. How can I be used? How can I be of service? And spend your day, whether you're at school, whether you're in the office, wherever you are. Let your daily orientation be focused on every minute wondering, how can I be used here? How can I be used? How can I be used? How can I help? How can I help? And that'll guide you through this moment, this phase. Trying to figure out what I want, I have found, is an exercise in futility. Because what we want, as I began with, we want to be happy. But that's a no-brainer. We know that. When you ask yourself, lying in bed before you get up, what do I want? It's always, what do I want to happen today? What do I want to do today? What do I want to... And there are times when we're not quite sure. There are times we're really clear. Times we're really goal-oriented, goal-focused. Super clear path. And then times not so much. And that's okay. Everything in nature has seasons. Rainy seasons, dry seasons, hot seasons, cold seasons. Seasons that trees give fruit, seasons that they don't. As any good farmer in agriculture knows, one of the best and most important things to do is let your field lie fallow from time to time. Don't plant anything in it. Let it re-nourish itself. And so there are phases in our life when the path isn't necessarily so clear. where there isn't necessarily such a specific goal in front of us, where we don't seem to be quite so productive as we have been at other times, and that's fine. It's beautiful, in fact. But don't let yourself drive yourself crazy over it. Don't let yourself tell yourself that there's something wrong with that. That somehow you must be the apple tree who gives apples 365 days a year. Instead, in these times when you're not sure what you're giving, am I an apple tree? Am I an orange tree? Am I a banana tree? Am I going to be a rose bush? What am I doing? Just leave it in God's hands. Just use me. And it may be little things all day long. All day long it may be. Somebody drops something, you pick it up for them. Somebody's hungry, you buy them a sandwich. Somebody's sad, you give them a smile. Somebody needs to rush home to a sick child, you do their work for them. Chup chop, kisi ko patte nahi hai. Could be anything. But just let that become your orientation now. And then the rest in terms of that which is manifesting through you, you'll find it. It'll arise automatically. In that space of openness, that space of spaciousness, that open-heartedness. Because then the universe knows, yeah, you're open and ready. You're there. You're available. And it'll come. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings. We invite you to join us here in the morning. Not here in Parmarth Niketan, but in our beautiful grove of ancient sacred trees for our morning yagna, beautiful fire ceremony every morning at 8. We have yoga classes in the morning just before that, in the afternoon as well. So whether you're staying here or not staying here, we invite you to join us for all of that. And I hope, of course, that all of you join us for the beautiful Ganga Arti just before the Satsang. There's a full day of very, very powerful, very special, very transformative offerings that are open for everyone, free for everyone, and here for you. So I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow evening. Have a beautiful, beautiful night.